What happens when two of the most outspoken personalities in media collide on live television? When Howard Stern, the king of no-holds-barred radio, sits across from Karoline Leavitt on The View, and what starts as a routine political interview quickly spirals into television chaos that nobody saw coming. This is a story about clashing values, unfiltered honesty, and the moment when political correctness gets thrown out the window. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really happened here. The studio lights were blazing hot that Tuesday morning as Karoline Leavitt settled into her chair on The View set, her trademark confident posture and crisp American flag pin firmly in place. She'd done dozens of interviews since becoming a leading voice for the new conservative movement. But today felt different. Howard Stern was sitting in as a guest co-host, filling in for one of the regular panelists who had called in sick at the last minute. The producers thought it would make for interesting television. They had no idea how interesting it was about to become. So Karoline, Howard began, leaning back in his chair with that familiar smirk that had made him famous. Let me ask you something that I think a lot of people are wondering about. You've talked a lot about your issues with the mainstream media, the DC swamp, the cancel culture, all of that. But here's what I don't get, and maybe you can help me understand it. Karoline shifted slightly, her media instincts already sensing where this was going. Of course. Howard, ask away. Well, he continued, you got into politics knowing how brutal it is, right? You had to know that calling out the establishment would come with backlash. I mean, come on, this isn't like joining the PTA and being shocked when someone disagrees with you. This is national politics we're talking about. The other co-hosts exchanged glances. This wasn't the gentle softball question they expected to start with. Joy Behar cleared her throat, ready to interject, but Howard held up a hand. No, let me finish this thought, he said, his voice taking on that familiar edge longtime listeners knew meant he was just warming up. You're a political operative. You understand optics. You understand strategy. So when you go on TV and accuse the media of being corrupt or say Democrats are destroying the country, did you really think that wouldn't blow back, or was that the whole point? Karoline's expression didn't flinch, but a subtle tension flickered behind her eyes. Howard, I think you are missing the forest for the trees here. When I speak out, it's not about stirring up chaos. It's about telling the truth. A truth that millions of Americans feel but are too afraid to say out loud. I don't do this for drama. I do it because someone has to. Your truth, Howard repeated, leaning on the phrase. See, that's where you lose me. Karoline breathed. Your truth, their truth, my truth. What happened to just plain old truth? Either something happened or it didn't, right? The studio audience was unusually quiet. This wasn't the typical View atmosphere where the crowd cheered every few minutes. Everyone could feel the tension building. I think when I say my truth, I mean my experience of the facts, Karoline said, her voice steady but gaining an edge. Like how media narratives get twisted to demonize conservatives. How average Americans get branded as extremists just for believing in borders. Faith and freedom. That's real. That's happening. Howard leaned forward, laser-focused now. Okay, but let's take that a step further, he said. You've made some strong accusations about election integrity, about government overreach. But a lot of people think you're stoking fear without offering real evidence. Isn't that kind of calculated? Like you throw the grenade but don't state a name because Karoline snapped, her tone sharpening when you do name names. They come after you, they come after your family, your reputation. I've seen it happen. But that doesn't mean we stop speaking up. It means we get smarter about how we fight back. So it's okay to torch the system generally but not be specific. When it counts, how shot back. Look, I'm not defending the media or DC. Believe me, but you can't keep throwing bombs and then act like you're taking the moral high ground. That's having it both ways. Joy Behar finally jumped in, trying to cool things down. Howard, I think what Karoline's trying to say is that there's a way to challenge institutions without burning every bridge. No, Joy, with all due respect, that's exactly the problem, Howard replied, not taking his eyes off Karoline. You can't have a conversation about truth and accountability and then tiptoe around who's responsible. You want to fight the system? Name it, don't just dance around it. Either the claim was explosive enough to say on national television, or it wasn't. You don't get to have it both ways. Karoline's composure was starting to crack, just slightly. Howard, you're oversimplifying a much deeper issue. These aren't just political opponents or talking heads. They're people I've worked with, some I've admired. I wasn't trying to set fire to the whole system. I was trying to strike a balance between calling out what's wrong and not torching every relationship I had in Washington. But you did torch them, Howard pressed. Let's be honest here. After your media crusades, after all the fiery sound bites and viral speeches, what kind of relationship do you really have with anyone in the establishment now? Because from the outside, it looks like You got your revenge in your hero narrative, but at the cost of nearly every meaningful connection you've ever had inside that world. The other co-hosts were visibly squirming. This was supposed to be a feel-good segment about Karoline's rising career and latest initiatives, not a full-on grilling about her motivations. I think that's a really unfair characterization, Karoline said, her voice rising for the first time. People act like I dragged folks into this. I didn't. I stood up and spoke the truth. I didn't force anyone to react the way they did. I was backed into a corner where silence wasn't an option anymore. Come on, Karoline, Howard said, voice thick with skepticism. You're a smart woman. You had to know that going on Fox News or any other major network and dropping truth bombs about the deep state and the media industrial complex was going to be nuclear. There's no way you thought that was going to lead to some polite bipartisan brunch. That was a declaration of war. It was not a declaration of war, Karoline snapped, her carefully controlled demeanor finally cracking. It was two people, me and millions of Americans, who were silenced, dismissed, mocked, finally getting a voice. We tried to go through proper channels, Howard, for years. But the moment we pushed back, we got smeared. Meanwhile, when their own insiders did something wrong, the media bent over backward to spin it. So, this was about fairness? Howard asked, clearly unconvinced. You felt like your side wasn't getting the same PR defense, so you took it to the airwaves. It was about survival, Karoline said, her voice charged with real conviction now. It was about watching people I care about get dragged through the mud for saying what they believe. It was about watching my colleagues struggle to keep their jobs, their reputations, just for standing up to the narrative. It was about fighting for our country's future. Howard leaned back in his chair, studying her. Okay, I can respect that. Country first, I get it. But here's what I still don't understand. If it was really about protecting values and standing up for working-class Americans, why continue operating inside the very media and political systems you claim are broken? Why not just walk away completely and build something brand new? The question hung in the air like smoke. Karoline's eyes flashed. This time, not with calm professionalism, but with unmistakable fire. That's rich coming from you, Howard, she said, her voice sharper now, making the entire studio sit up straighter. You've built your career pushing boundaries, stirring outrage and capitalizing on controversy. And now you want to question me about how I fight for what I believe in. At least I'm using my platform to try and fix something. Howard's eyebrows shot up and that familiar grin stretched across his face. He loved it when a guest finally fought back. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. But here's the difference where I never claimed to be anything other than what I am. I'm a shock jock. I ask uncomfortable questions. I make people squirm. I own that. But you want to be seen as this principled reformer, this patriotic underdog, taking on a corrupt system, while also cashing in on the outrage industry. Cashing in, Karoline's voice jumped an octave. Everything I've done since stepping out of government has been about service. Educating voters, empowering young conservatives, challenging media bias. The book deals, the speaking tours, the grassroots work. It's all part of a mission, right? Service, Howard said, dragging out the word with a smirk. Service that just happens to include media contracts, think tank consulting gigs, and a growing online brand. Look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with making money. Good for you. But don't package it in this noble reformer narrative while you're clearly building a movement around being the girl who took on the swamp. Joy Behar tried again to steer the conversation back. Howard, maybe we should pivot to talking about Karoline's new initiatives. No, Joy, this matters, Howard said, cutting her off. Because this gets at the heart of something that bugs me about political media today. Everyone wants to be the victim and the warrior at the same time. You can't be both, Karoline, either. You're the underdog who got steamrolled by the system, or you're a powerhouse who leveraged it to build an empire. Pick one. Karoline leaned forward, her composure now visibly cracked. You know what, Howard? You sit in this air-conditioned studio making millions of dollars running your mouth about people you don't know, and you think you understand what it's like to be called a threat to democracy just for standing up for conservative values. You think you understand what it's like to have your own peers blacklist you, to be doxxed, smeared, and lied about by corporate media. You don't know a damn thing about what people like me have had to endure. You're right, Howard admitted, though his tone remained firm. I don't. But here's what I do know. When you step into the national spotlight, when you go full throttle on controversial issues, when you go on every major outlet and blast the system, that door swings both ways. You don't get to control the response. You open that door, Karoline, and people, like me, are going to walk through it. There's a difference between honest criticism and whatever this is. Karoline snapped. You're not asking real questions, Howard. You're trying to bait me, tear me down for views. That's exactly the kind of toxic media culture I've been fighting against, Howard laughed. A full, unfiltered laugh that filled the studio. Toxic behavior. Lady, You've spent the last 2 years accusing entire institutions of being corrupt and dangerous. You've painted yourself as the righteous outsider while torching everyone in your path. And I'm toxic because I'm asking you to explain your tactics. Please, we've shared our truth, our experience, Karoline said, her voice starting to shake with emotion. Just because I didn't name every bad actor on live TV doesn't mean I was dishonest. It means I chose not to drag people into something they weren't ready to face. But that also doesn't mean you were telling the whole truth, Howard countered, and that's my problem. You've built a narrative where you're the truth teller, the underdog, but you also act like anyone who questions that narrative is attacking democracy or silencing voices. That's not how public discourse works. Whoopi Goldberg, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Howard, maybe we should consider that Karoline's lived experience has real pain behind it, even if we don't know every detail. Whoopi, I'm sure she's faced backlash. Howard said, I'm not denying that. Politics is brutal, and the media can be unforgiving. But my issue is how she's used that hardship publicly. How it's become a platform, a brand, even a business. And it's all wrapped up in the language of service, patriotism, and fighting for the people. Karoline's hands were visibly trembling now. You have no idea what you're talking about. Everything I've done has been dissected, distorted, weaponized by people like you. People who care more about feeding the outrage machine than actually understanding what's happening to this country. People like me, Howard's tone sharpened. What exactly does that mean, Karoline? Because it sounds like you're dismissing real, fair questions just because they make you uncomfortable. That's pretty convenient, isn't it? It means people who profit from outrage. Karoline fired back, her voice rising. People who take legitimate political fights, reduce them to punchlines, and turn them into entertainment without giving a damn about the people getting crushed underneath it all. Human costs, huh? Howard leaned back and shook his head. Karoline, you've turned your battle against the system into a franchise. Speaking tours, think tank gigs, influencer deals, viral videos. It's a whole media empire built on being the rebel. Don't sit there and lecture me on ethics when you've monetized every last inch of your political story. That is not what I've done, Karoline said, but her voice had lost the edge it carried earlier. Isn't it though? Howard pressed the interviews, the speeches, the political commentary circuit. It's the same story every time. How you were targeted, how you were silenced, how you were right, and everyone else was wrong. And each time you tell it, you gain followers, sell books, sign deals. We tell the story because it matters, Karoline insisted, now visibly shaken. Because people out there are facing this, getting censored, losing jobs, feeling like they have no voice. If I can help them by telling the truth, then that's worth something. Help them, Howard said, his voice full of disbelief. Karoline, how many people can actually relate to a 20-some political staffer turned pundit going viral for calling out the deep state? Let's be honest, you're not helping ordinary people navigate tax season. You're selling a culture war narrative to people who want it to feel like they're fighting back. You're not relatable, you're a brand. The studio had gone dead silent. The cameras were still rolling, but even the crew seemed frozen, watching the standoff unfold in real time. Karoline's face was flushed, the tension finally showing through. The polished appearance she had walked in with, when she finally spoke, her voice was low, but burning with fury. You know what, Howard, you want to talk about privilege? Fine, let's talk about your privilege. You've spent decades making millions by mocking middle America, ridiculing conservatives, tearing down traditional values, all from the safety of your cushy studio, and now you want to lecture me about how to handle being targeted, deep, and vilified for what I believe in. Howard's grin widened. He was right where he thrived. There it is, he said. When you can't defend your actions, you attack the person asking questions. Classic deflection, Karoline. But here's the difference between me and you. I've never pretended to be anything but provocative. I don't package myself as some wholesome patriot while cashing in on outrage. I own my flaws. At least I'm trying to evolve and do better. Karoline fired back, eyes blazing. At least I'm using my experiences to wake people up and fight for a country that's being torn apart. Not sitting behind a mic tearing people down for sport. Help people. Howard's voice oozed disbelief. Karoline, come on. You've helped exactly one person, yourself. You've turned being silenced into a personal brand. Every podcast, every speech, every press hit, it's the same message, same outrage, and same payoff. Joy Behar jumped in again, desperate to shift the tone. Maybe we could talk about Karoline's youth outreach and civics initiatives. No, Joy, let's finish this, Howard said, eyes locked on Karoline. Because this is exactly the point. Even your youth activism is just another chapter in your personal narrative. It's always about you, your struggle, your story, your pain. That's not public service. That's performance. Bim Moss. Karoline suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't have to sit here and be attacked like this. This isn't journalism, Howard. This isn't even entertainment. This is personal. This is cruelty dressed up as commentary. Sit down, Karoline, Howard said, calm but firm. Because if you walk away now, you're proving my point. You're brave when you're on stage talking about the deep state, but you can't handle it when you're the one being questioned. Karoline remained standing, hands clenched at her sides. There's nothing to explain. I walked away from a broken, corrupt system, and ever since I've been trying to build something better. If you can't see that, Howard, it says more about you than it does about me. A broken system you keep going to Act 2 for headlines. Howard replied sharply, if it was really that toxic, if it damaged you that deeply, why can't you stop circling it? Why is every appearance, every op-ed still connected to your political fallout? You've been out of office and campaigns for years. Karoline, when do you stop being the silenced conservative and start being just Karoline Leavitt? Because people like you won't let me, Karoline snapped, her voice cracking for the first time. Every time I speak, every project I touch, the first question is about cancel culture, about the system that tried to crush me. You think I want to relive it? You think I enjoy being the poster girl for media hit jobs? Howard's voice dropped into something quieter and sharper. I think you need it, he said. I think your entire platform is built around being the girl who went to war with the establishment. Without that, without the drama, the enemies, the story, what's left? Who are you, Karoline, when the fight is over? The question landed like a punch. Karoline's mask of composure shattered. Her eyes welled with tears, her voice gone, her energy drained. The girl who always had the last word suddenly didn't. My brand. Karoline's voice cracked slightly as she leaned forward. My brand is being a daughter, a citizen, a woman who cares deeply about this country, but people like you reduce everything I do to outrage theater or right-wing spectacle. You strip it of purpose and mock it like it's some punchline. Then stop feeding it. Karoline, Howard said, his tone softer now, but still pointed. Stop doing interviews about how you were canceled. Stop making content about how corrupt the media is. Stop letting your team blast the establishment every time someone criticizes you. Just stop and show us who Karoline Leavitt really is without the war story. It's not that simple, Karoline whispered, sinking back into her chair. The narrative follows me. The media won't let it go. The online mobs won't let it go. And yeah, sometimes we've leaned into it because we felt like we had no choice but to push back. But you do have a choice, Howard said, leaning forward now. You always do. You can walk away from the fight. You can build something new separate from your anti-elite persona. But that would mean giving up the thing that makes you different, wouldn't it? That would mean being just.